Hey everyone! Today we're diving into an exciting topic that's shaking up the world of translation and literature. We're going to explore how machine translation is affecting the creativity of literary translations and the reading experience of book lovers. So, picture this, you're curled up with your favorite book, completely lost in the story. But have you ever wondered about the journey that book took to reach you, especially if it's a translation? Well, that's exactly what a group of researchers set out to investigate. They took a short story in English and had it translated into Catalan in 3 different ways. First, they used a machine translation system, like Google Translate, but a bit more advanced. Then, they had professional translators post-edit the machine translation output. And finally, they had the story translated from scratch by human translators. Now, you might be thinking, what's the big deal? Isn't machine translation getting really good these days? Well, that's what makes this study so interesting. The researchers wanted to see if there were differences in creativity between these 3 methods and how readers responded to each version. Let's start with creativity. How do you even measure creativity in translation? Well, the researchers looked at 2 main things: how accurate the translation was and how innovative it was in solving translation problems. For example, imagine translating the phrase "it's raining cats and dogs" into another language. A machine might translate it literally, which would sound pretty weird in most languages. A human translator, on the other hand, might come up with a creative equivalent in the target language that captures the same idea of heavy rain. So, what did they find? Unsurprisingly, the human translators working from scratch were the most creative. They came up with the most innovative solutions to tricky translation problems. The post-edited machine translation was less creative, but still more so than the raw machine translation. But here's where it gets really interesting. The researchers also wanted to know how readers would respond to these different translations. So they got a group of Catalan readers and gave them each one version of the story to read, without telling them how it was translated. They asked the readers all sorts of questions about their reading experience. How engaged were they in the story? How much did they enjoy it? Did they notice it was a translation? The results were fascinating. The readers who got the human translated version or the post-edited version reported being more engaged in the story and enjoying it more than those who read the machine translated version. They also rated these versions as better translations. But here's a surprise, there wasn't much difference between the human translated version and the post-edited version in terms of reader experience. In fact, readers enjoyed the post-edited version slightly more, even though they thought the human translated version was a bit better as a translation. Now, let's pause for a moment and think about what this means. Machine translation, even when post-edited by professionals, seems to lose something in terms of creativity compared to human translation from scratch. But readers don't seem to notice much difference between post-edited machine translation and human translation when it comes to their enjoyment and engagement with the story. This raises some really interesting questions. Is the extra creativity of human translation worth the extra time and cost if readers don't notice much difference? Or is there something subtle being lost that might matter more for certain types of literature? It's also worth noting that this was just one short story. The differences might be more noticeable in a full novel, especially one with a more complex or poetic style. The researchers also found that machine translation on its own still lags behind. Readers noticed more problems with the machine-translated version, found it harder to understand, and enjoyed it less. So we're not quite at the point where machines can replace human translators for literature, at least not without human post-editing. But the fact that post-edited machine translation performs so well is pretty amazing. It suggests that machine translation could be a useful tool for translators, helping them work more quickly without sacrificing too much in terms of the reader's experience. This has huge implications for the world of literature. Could machine translation help get books translated into more languages more quickly? Could it make translated literature more accessible and affordable? These are exciting possibilities. At the same time, we need to think carefully about what might be lost. Human translators often talk about the creative process of translation, how they need to really understand and reimagine the story to bring it to life in a new language. If we rely too heavily on machine translation, even with post-editing, could we lose some of that magic? There's also the question of the translator's voice. Just like authors have their own unique style, skilled literary translators often have their own voice that comes through in their work. Some readers even follow particular translators because they love their style. Could that individual touch be lost with machine translation? These are complex questions without easy answers. But this research gives us a fascinating glimpse into the future of translation and how it might affect our reading experiences. So, next time you pick up a translated book, take a moment to appreciate the artistry involved in bringing that story to you in your language. And who knows? In the future, that artistry might be a blend of human and machine creativity. That's all for today, folks. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, would you be comfortable reading a machine-translated book? Or do you prefer the human touch? See you next time.